My name is Eugenio. Let me go here. I'm Eugenio Pace. I am an architect in the architecture strategy team in Microsoft. And as you can tell, English is not my first language. I originally come from Argentina. But I live in the US for, now for a couple of years. And so if there's anything that you don't understand or maybe some words that are difficult, I'm sure it's my fault that I'm not pronouncing them in the right way. So please raise your hand, don't be shy, let me know if anything is not clear, okay? So normally when I do these kind of presentations, I get the chance to understand what the previous presentations are about, but in this case, I don't. I happen to be there sitting and trying to get some glimpse. I know that the first one was about SharePoint, because that's the only English word that I understood. And what I normally do when I do understand what they say before, is I adjust my presentation based on what was previously said. So if you find any contradictions between what I say and what the previous speaker said, of course, I am right and they are wrong, all right? So today's session, which is a long session, we have like 2 hours ahead of us. And I have a ton of stuff to show you. There's a bunch of demos that I would like to share with you today. I hope that all of them will work. I do need the network for that. And it seems that the network is quite good, so we shouldn't have any trouble with that. But the subject for today is software plus services. And this is a technical presentation, so we're not going to cover a lot of the business aspects of software and services or software delivered as a service. But if anybody of you is interested in talking about that, we are always interested in doing businesses, I'm sure. So if you have any questions, specific questions, I will be more than happy to take them. You know, we can do like one series of questions at the end of the first hour, which is more or less what it will take us to cover the first kind of the building aspect of software and services, and then we will cover the other 2 aspects, which is the running and consumption aspects of software as a service, okay? So before we jump into the architecture of applications that are delivered as a service, what I like to do is to introduce this fictitious and oversimplified world where different players become very evident. And I like to do this simply not because the diagram is nice, but rather to highlight the different roles and different responsibilities that all these people will have. So in the world that I would describe, you will see that there's different archetypes, different actors, but in the real world, those actors might be actually the same person and of the same organization. So don't take it too literally, what I'm going to say, what I'm going to show. This is kind of a model that I will use later on to explain what are the challenges and what are the solutions for those challenges, which is, end of the day, what I care the most about. Just as a side note, my team is responsible for creating, for identifying, first of all, problems, challenges, issues of building applications in certain scenarios. And then, knowing the problem is half of the solution for that problem. Once we know what the problems are, we also like to publish content around the solutions for those problems, obviously showing how to do it with the Microsoft platform, which is what pays our salaries and everything. End of the day, we want you guys to be successful with the Microsoft platform. So that's kind of our mission, all right? So are you familiar with software delivered as a service? Who is not familiar with it? Okay, so are you, those who have raised your hands, do you use any service like Hotmail or any of the other not as advanced emails, you probably do. Well, that's a perfect example of software delivered as a service. You don't need to buy necessarily a license to use Hotmail. You don't need to install necessarily anything in your machines. The experience of consuming something like Hotmail with something like Outlook might be better because you can do it offline and you can do email when you're flying on a plane without necessarily being connected to Hotmail. But that's a perfect example of the services world that I'm going to show you, and this world of software delivered as a service. So this notion that instead of buying a traditional software package, a box of software that you install in your servers, in your machines, in your on-premise, as we say, you rather consume a capability that is delivered over the network. That is software delivered as a service. In Microsoft, we like to change names for many things. One of those is obviously the world of services, and instead of calling it just software as a service, we call it software plus services, because we believe that the world is not going to be completely online and completely on the web, but rather will be a combination, and or I would say the world will be better if we can have the choice to choose, one way or the other. A pure web offering on one side, a pure online world on one side, or maybe software that it's being used as it is mostly used today, which is installed on hardware, on your own hardware, on your own machines. And those are the two ends of the spectrum. There is a combination of things, in the middle. And we believe in that combination of what's the best thing. We don't believe in one single solution for every problem, all right? So that's essentially what software and services is. And the intention, of course, is describing, again, all of the challenges that you will face depending on who you are and what your role and responsibilities are in your organization. So in our world, we have an ISV, and the ISV is the name that we give to companies that develop software. ISV is an independent software developer. So any of you who, your business, your life is to create software that then you sell to somebody else to use, that's you. That's on the other side. Leadware, and you will see a lot of names here, Leadware, Northwind Hosting, what else? Contoso, Fabricam, all of those are fake names that our 10,000 lawyers allows us to use and without getting sued or anything. So Leadware is the name that we can use. We use as an archetype of many things. In this case, Leadware will be the ISV. So the ISV essentially creates software for others to consume. And one of those customers of Leadware is Fabricam. Fabricam is a manufacturing company. It's a very small company. It's my father's company. He's everything. He's the owner, the CEO, the HR manager, the accountant. He's everything in that company, okay? That type of customer, it's very close to the consumer archetype. It's the guy that uses Hotmail, even though Leadware solution that is delivered to that person, it's a business app. So it's an HR management system, for example. For that person, an experience like consuming Leadware with a web browser, it's enough. Because, my father or the owner in Fabricam only uses the app every once in a while. It's an occasional user. It will only go there, once a week, once a day, and that's fine. They don't have very strong requirements, very high requirements. They might even be okay if they see some advertisements around the main application because, they don't care, all right? That's, by the way, the typical software as a service target. It's what you will hear in other literature, in other publications, as the long tail users. And then we have Contoso. Contoso is another company. It's slightly different from Fabricam in the sense that Contoso, it's bigger than Fabricam. And they have, one guy who is an HR manager. And that's because they have many employees. This is a typical medium business, the small and medium business. They that HR manager there is not an occasional user. It's a guy who stays, maybe 6 hours, 5 hours a day using the system that Leadware delivers. So for them, seeing advertisements around and bothering and being intrusive in their UI is not okay. He doesn't want that. And by the way, he travels, he might have other needs. He has a need for a more sophisticated user experience. And that's why, for those guys, Leadware provides two different options. They have the web client, and they have a smart client, something that that is specialized in that particular task and makes the life of the HR manager easier and simpler. And obviously, because the Leadware HR is not necessarily installed in a server in any of these customers, it has to be installed somewhere. Someone has to run the bits that are going to be delivered across the network. And in many cases, that's done through a hoster. So there's a company that all they do is host services for others. And they might host web pages, the traditional hosting side, but they might host also solutions, things like Leadware HR. So Leadware partners with Northwind Hosting to deliver Leadware to their own customers. Okay, so that's another member in our world that we have been introducing. Okay, and Northwind is responsible for all of the kind of running and operations of Leadware. If Leadware is down, the first guy who will notice that, it's probably Contoso, but hopefully will also be Northwind that has all the alerts and alarms and all of the operational procedures to know that what's happening there. And obviously this goes to other people using the system. Finally, we have the big corporations, people big like Global Bank. Global Bank, it's a huge multinational bank like Woodgrove in a previous demo, another approved name from Microsoft. So Global Bank, it's a huge company, thousands of employees. They are not going to use the little smart client. They are not going to use the web client. They definitely don't want any advertisements there. And they have other requirements. They might have even so strong requirements and so complicated requirements that they might choose to deploy Leadware on their own servers because they already have the IT infrastructure, the IT people, all of the kind of underlying supporting infrastructure to deliver that capability. But in a more sophisticated world, they might decide to use its own HR system for the core of HR management and use Leadware HR, which is nice, it's simpler, has a very nice interface, and it's more agile for their branches. So they might have like a differentiated use of the same capability, which is Leadware HR for certain aspects of the HR management and their own HR system, whatever that is, PeopleSoft implementation for their core hiring and their core HR management. So you see here kind of the hybrid and all of the options that I was referring to beforehand. And the question is, of course, how does Leadware create and architect a system that plays well here? Because these are very different use patterns, these are very different customers, and how do they make sure they have a scalable way, especially if Leadware is a small ISV, to serve all these different customers satisfactorily? All right, so Northwind is not interested in just hosting Leadware, obviously. That would be an example of a self-hosting ISV, an ISV that is also a hoster. But the world shows us that all of the infrastructure that Northwind has, the building, the air conditioning, the power supply, redundancy, the networking equipment, the servers, all of that costs money. That's capital investment. And their goal is to kind of distribute that cost among a large number of ISVs. The larger the number of ISVs, The larger the amount of people that they can host on the same building, on the same infrastructure, with the same operations, with the same team, the better for them, because they can distribute that cost on a large number of customers. Okay? So Northwind has an interest in hosting many applications, not just one, in the most efficient way. And that gives place to another actor in this world, which is what we call aggregator, and we don't have a name for that guy, poor guy. It's an aggregator, and that's somebody that white labels solutions from ISVs and resells them into packages. So, for example, this aggregator might choose to pick up Leadware HR from Leadware and Duwamish ERP from Duwamish ISV and change their names and put, Eugenio package for small businesses. And underneath, those are two different solutions which are integrated and packaged into one new solution, which is Eugenio's package. And there's a lot of hosters that are doing that. And that doesn't necessarily, that's not necessarily the same organization. That the hoster could be a telecommunication company, and the aggregator can be another company, or could be the same, of course. Okay, so once again, oops, there. How can Leadware and Duwamish create an application? What are the implications in the application design to enable an aggregator to bundle these solutions with another one? The most basic requirement that you can think about is the UI customization, because the logos, the look and feel, and everything should be different from the Leadware version that sells directly from the version that it's aggregated with Duwamish. So how can Leadware architect their solution so it's brandable, or it's going to be rebranded for others to resell? Okay, so just those are hints of the challenges, the types of challenges that I wanted to highlight. And then something else is happening, and this is not really new as a concept, but it's really new in terms of availability. And that is this notion of cloud services. And cloud services meaning basic building block services that are available online for everybody to use. And I remember, many years ago, that I was really surprised when I was able to buy from somebody, some random company somewhere in the world, like a specialized calendar or a tree view or a grid that I could drag and drop on my form. I could buy a very specialized component from another company. I didn't have to be an expert on doing calendars or doing tree views or doing a grid, all of the controls that we use for Visual Basic 6-based applications. The concept is the same here. It's the same thing, that somebody else is providing you a basic service that by itself is not very interesting. Nobody will use, my father will never use, storage on the cloud. It doesn't mean anything for him. But for me, that I'm a system developer, or I'm an architect, or I'm an ISV, well, having somebody else provide a scalable, secure, global storage service system that I can have access to kind of looks interesting. At least something that I can evaluate and see if the pros are larger than the cons. And so what's happening is that there's an emergent number of services that are becoming available. A lot of them are coming from companies like Microsoft, which are traditional platform players, that are providing these building block services that ISVs can use to enhance and augment the experience of an end application. And those two are the two that are already available, or in different stages, like cloud storage is not yet a production system. It's in CTP or beta or something, but it's something that you can begin to play with. And of course, bespoke services for identity is already there, for connectivity is already there, and it's going to be enhanced with much other features in the short term. And finally, there's other types of building block services which are more like the consumer-oriented services that also can be used in applications to provide an enhanced experience. And those are things like, all of the live services that Microsoft makes available. Probably the mostly used of these type of building blocks is the map services that you can mash up into your apps. So, without you, again, being an expert on mapping and geographic information and all of that, you can leverage what is available there and provide an enhanced experience to your app. Okay, so before I move on, who believes I am crazy with this world? Do you kind of agree? It's simplified. The world is more complex than this. But do you agree that in general terms, these are kind of the actors, these are the, okay, good. It's always good to validate, our models, and we continually refine our thinking based on this. So, obviously, you can be all of this. A company, and there's a lot of big companies that they themselves behave like all of these together. I know a bank that has 9,000 applications internally. That's larger than a lot of hosters that are out there. So they are like as big as a big hoster. And their own development teams behave and act as ISVs. And their customers are, the customers that I have identified here. The point is that from an architecture perspective, all of these can be extrapolated to different scenarios quite easily. And the technical decisions that you make will probably be very similar. So I find this model not to be that restrictive if you have that, exercise. So, as I said, we use this to bucketize problems, and we have these like 4 buckets. And that's not me. That's not my animation, by the way. So we have these 4 buckets of problems. Today we're going to talk about these 3: building, running, and consuming. And especially consuming if you're in this segment of the market. So if you are more like an enterprise trying to use software as a service, what does it mean? From an integration, from a management perspective. If you're a hoster or you're responsible for running apps, what does it mean? And if you're an ISV and you're building apps, well, how do you architect an app that plays well here? All right? So, if you're building an app, the good news or the bad news, depending how you look at it, is that building apps like that play well in this means that you still need to be a good architect, so to say. So all of the challenges of building apps that are not enabled as a service still apply in this world. So you still need to build scalable, secure, nice, and maintainable apps. That's a given. What's happening is that there's an additional set of challenges on top of the basic challenges of building any app in this world. And so what we have done in the past year or year and a half is we have identified kind of the biggest challenges. There are many others that we haven't addressed, quite frankly. So the solutions that we are providing are not complete, but we believe that the solutions that we have tackled are actually kind of on the top 5 things that you will face. And we have identified like 3 or 4 big areas that you will find most probably as being challenging if you're in this space. And the first one is this whole thing that we call designing the back end as a service. And these are the things that we have identified there. The first one is this notion of multi-tenancy and isolation. Are you familiar with multi-tenancy? Tenant, the word tenant is the word that we use for somebody who is renting an apartment or in a building. It's the same word. So the idea of multi-tenancy is that it's this idea of using many customers using the same application. So that goes against isolation, because obviously the moment that you share something with other customers, you have a risk of intermixing some information or data or processes. This is the same analogy that happens when you in a lot in a city, you build a house or you build a tall building. In a tall building, you put many families. In a single house, you only have one family, so it's completely isolated. When you build a tall building, there's services that are shared among all owners or tenants. The water, the land, the entrance, the elevator, all of that thing is shared with all of the owners of the building. It's much more efficient from an economical perspective because the same lot is reused with all of those. Building a single house in the middle of Budapest, it's probably very expensive. You can only afford one apartment. Here's the same thing. What if you can reuse the same application with multiple customers, all at the same time? Ideally, every tier of the app with the same customer, sorry. So the UI, the same business logic, the same database for everybody. So if you're an ISV and in the same infrastructure, say in one server, in one web server, one services server, and in one database I can put 1,000 customers, good, because the cost of these three pieces is divided by 1,000 instead of being applied to one. That's the notion of multi-tenancy. Building multi-tenant apps means that you have to create an application that it's customizable and it's extensible, because no two customers are the same, unless you're using Hotmail, which is, everybody has the same app. Hotmail in itself, it's multi-tenant. It's the same app for everybody, but I cannot do much. I can change a few things, but in essence, it's a very simple app. It's email. Now think about business apps. Business apps typically need customization and extensibility in all layers. Why? Well, because Fabricam and Contoso are different. They have different requirements. They have different data they manipulate, different logic, different UI, and all of that. So how do you create an app that is data-driven, that it's metadata-driven, that based on the customizations of each customer, they will behave differently? And that's kind of the second of these challenges. The third one is obviously performance and scalability. And this is no surprise. If you are selling in the traditional world, your app, let's say you design your app to be used by 100 or 10 concurrent users, for example. So your app scales okay with 10 concurrent users because that's the segment that you were targeting. Your customers will have 10 users. Now, if you move to the services world, you put the things that you were deploying on each customer is going to go to Northwind, to the hoster. And so now, if you sell to 100 customers, it's 100 by 10, your app has to scale to 1,000 concurrent users. So the system that you designed to work with 10 concurrent users now had to scale to 1,000. These systems very fast, very quickly have very, extreme scalability requirements. I think Microsoft has literally thousands of servers for a service like Hotmail, simply because we have millions of concurrent users. So how do you design a system with performance in mind? It's not that before you didn't have to think about performance, but what I'm saying is that, or for that case, all of these requirements are pretty much present in any system, but if you're building systems that are going to be delivered as a service, these are highlighted. They are even more important. That's my point. The fourth one is not as common, and it's what I call the service layer design, and that is typically in a typically architected solution with Microsoft technologies. You have a web or a UI tier, you have a services tier, and you have a database for persistence. The middle tier, it's usually a functional tier. If you are building an HR system, you have things like submit resume, or open position, or evaluate candidate, or hire, those kind of verbs. If you're building an e-banking system, you have things like transfer funds and things like that. If you're building an app like this, you need to also create a set of services that will expose the customization for the app itself. So there's typically, what happens is there's an emergence of two different types of services. One is the functional services, and another one is a list of services that describe dynamically how the application has been changed, customized, and extended for one particular customer. Okay? It's like a reflection API, more or less. Just, we will see that working, but imagine that you're creating a web form. To draw the web form and to include the fields that are available for one particular customer, you have to ask the system what fields this customer has. So that's the kind of service that you need to implement. And then a lot of these applications that target the long tail, they have this notion of try before you buy or self-service. A lot of the design and a lot of the customizations are pushed to the end user, not to Leadware. Leadware doesn't want the Contosos or the Fabricams of the world to call them on the phone and say, hey, I want to add a new field to my resume. Why? Because that doesn't scale. You will need a legion of consultants as Leadware to customize the thousands of apps that potentially could be used in the system. So again, if you want to change something in Hotmail or any of those systems, it's very limited what you can do. You cannot ask someone to do that for you, and not Microsoft. You cannot call Microsoft to say, I want to change the color of my Hotmail account. Nobody will answer. I warranty. So how do we make a system that exposes these customization capabilities in a way that it's consumable by anybody? By somebody like my father, for example. The second set of challenges is, it's not surprising again, and we mentioned this already, is this notion of building the right front end. Because people have different needs. Globalbank, Fabricam, and Contoso are all different customers. Creating a system that can be consumed with in different experiences in a consistent way, it's critical. So this typically means that all of your application is exposed with a services API. And so you can give your customers an API, and this is the REST endpoints or the SOAP endpoints for the application, or this is a web application if you want to use the web, and here's a smart client for those of you who want to use a better and have a better experience with that. And the last one, I already mentioned, is taking advantage of cloud services. That's going to become even more relevant as we move forward, because obviously those cloud services will be more available and will be more reliable and will be more relevant as we move forward, okay? There's another example that I didn't mention before. I think it's the two that we are going to demonstrate today, hopefully, and you will see in our reference app, Civilized Streaming Services and SQL Data Services. So we built a reference app. Have any of you know about Leadware HR? Yeah, you guys, of course, know it. Okay, good, excellent, because all of what I'm going to tell you now, it's new, and you will not be bored, hopefully, and you will not be asleep when I'm talking. So we built a system, which is an incomplete system, functionally incomplete, but architecturally sound, meaning that we believe it's well architected, and it's well designed according to the principles that we described before. So we created this system called Leadware HR. It's an HR management application. It manages recruitment, so you can open a position, you can apply for a job, you can submit your resume, all those kind of things. Obviously, it's not a final app. It's not finished. It's completely useless as an HR system. So don't think that you can resell Leadware HR as it is. You have to do a lot of work on top of it. But that was not our goal. Our goal was to identify the problems and show the solutions. So Leadware is built with all the state-of-the-art technology in Microsoft. There's a services layer which is built on WCF and Workflow Foundation. And there's two sets of services, functional services and the metadata services. Functional services are things like open positions, submit resume, etc. Metadata services is things like, give me the view description for tenant X. Give me the definition of the entity resume for tenant Y. Those kind of introspection, reflection APIs are all concentrated there. Second, there is an exposure of these services with a web client. So there's two sites, two websites. There's what we call the private website. All of these are implemented with ASP.NET and Ajax. So this is the first experience that you get, which is a web experience. And the private website is kind of the control panel. It's the system that a tenant will use to change and customize the app for their own needs. This is changing the look and feel, changing the forms, the entities, the business logic, all of that. And you will see some of the self-service capabilities that I mentioned before. Then there is the public website. And the public website is the one that everybody uses to actually open positions and publish new jobs and search for jobs and submit resumes and all of that. Okay? So there's a web client. We also built a smart client, which is based on WPF, which works offline against all of the APIs. And you can also use the REST and SOAP APIs that we also expose. So again, what I said before, all of Leadware can be used in a variety of environments and experiences. And then there is the back end of this. So there's a persistence of this. And we have one implementation which is using SQL Server. And we are using a single instance multi-tenant architecture. So all of the layers that you see here are the same for everybody. So if Leadware has 2,000 customers, all of them will be using the same version of the app, even the same database, which might be a stretch. You know, not everybody will be okay with all customers sharing the same database. You might require, you know, that each tenant has its own instance of a database for security reasons, for legal reasons, for whatever. But because it's harder to do single instance, we did that one. Separating is easier once you have all this architecture. And the interesting thing here is that, obviously, the entities in Leadware are extensible entities. When you define something like resume or a position, well, depending on who you are as a customer, if you're a music school, the position for a music teacher fields and all the description is different from, say, a software development company. In one, you will have like, what instrument do you play, and what is your experience? And on the other one, you will have, what's your programming language? So the programming language and instrument are all two different fields that are different from one and two customers. So how do you do that with SQL Server? SQL Server is a rectangular machine. It doesn't like having different fields for one particular table. So we did some tricks there that we will show. But we also replaced and re-implemented all of the data layer with SQL Server Data Services, which is an online storage service, which is based on SQL Server. It is hosted by Microsoft, but it's completely different from SQL. So there's no tables, there's no indexes, there's none of those typical common artifacts that you might be used to. But they have a lot of advantages in our scenario, and we will see that. So we also implemented that. And finally, because this is an HR system, we wanted to show integration with other external services. We also integrated Leadware with Silverlight streaming. So you guys know what Silverlight is. It's this media delivery platform that Microsoft has created. Well, Silverlight Services is a delivery system. It's a delivery service. It's not just the client. It's something where you can upload video files and media content. And Microsoft has, I don't know, millions of servers around the world, and all of the bandwidth and networking to deliver the videos and the media for anybody to consume. And you have like a way of uploading and downloading and managing your portfolio of videos. So we implemented this feature, which is the video resume. So when you apply for a job, you submit your experience, your information, and everything else, but you can also upload a video of yourself, to see how fast you can type in programming, or if you're a music player, you can show somebody playing, which is the demo I'm going to show you. Okay, so this is Leadware. Leadware is available for free. We don't charge a cent on all of our content. It's all available for free in our website. You have all the links to this. And it's also obviously provided with all the source code and everything for you to look at inside and see how it's been built and designed, because that's our goal, showing you how we solved all these issues. With that, I'm going to do the demo of Leadware HR. Before that, any questions? Like big red flags, things that don't resonate quite well with you? Make sense what I said? Do you understand what I'm saying? Maybe I'm speaking, Good, excellent. So if you laughed, that was a test. If you laughed with that, means that you understand. All right, so, and this is going to be a little tricky because I need to use my two hands, unfortunately. So let me, is this working, the audio? Okay, good. So here, let me see if I am doing a remote session with a machine in my office, so it might be a little bit slow in refreshing and so on. But this is Leadware HR. This is the homepage of Leadware. I'm going to play the role of a company, a small company. I am the, let's say, excuse me, pronunciation, Listverenk, is that? Good. I am Listverenk Music School, and so I am a music school, and I want to use Leadware HR to hire music teachers. Okay, so that's my whole use case here. So here's Leadware. I kind of like Leadware, so I'm going to start the provisioning step. First step in Leadware is to create a new instance of Leadware for myself, for Listverenk. So list music school. Oh, you guys think that I cannot write Ferenc? Look. Hey, I did my homework. So this is Listverenk Music School. I'm going to, as an option, you see there, it says enable integration with Silverlight streaming. That's an optional feature because, for example, as a programming software development shop, it might not make much sense to do a video. But let's say that I do that. And what I need to do, go away, it's I need to provide my credentials to, where is my credential? It's there, believe me. So look at that. Leadware does not create an account in Silverlight Streaming. It asks the tenant, in this case, the music school, to provide the credentials so they can manage videos for on behalf of. So I'm going to give my credentials. I'm not sure what happened with Notepad, but anyway. So I'm saying, for managing all the videos, please use these credentials, okay? And don't copy them. That's mine. I'm going to use a password. And I'm going to provision the app. So what happens now behind the scenes, when this finishes, is that a new website is created. Actually, two new websites are created. One is a private site, the other one is a public site, remember? The customization site, the public site. So if you look, see the link there, there's a link for Listverenk Music School, for both. And also the database and everything else behind the scenes is customized for this new tenant, for List Music School. So as the owner and HR manager in the music school, I'm going to the private website to change many aspects of the app. To do that, of course, I need to log in as an HR manager, as the admin of the site, which is, by the way, the same user I used to provision the site in the first time. So let's do password. Bye-bye. Give me 1 second. Thank you. All right, so now I'm logging. And Leadware will allow me to customize pretty much all layers of the app. First of all, let me go to the option there. I'm the admin now. I can change what each user can do. And out of the box, of course, Leadware gives me like a predefined set of roles and tasks. Leadware is built with a trusted subsystem model. So identities are never flowed behind the web client, but claims and roles are. So the services layer does not know about admins or Eugenio or any of those. What it knows about, it's about the claims that guy will take. So the claims for an admin are enough to do things like do all these things, create, customize, change, and all of that. If you bring those claims, then you can do all of these actions. So pretty much everything in the app is driven with all those claims that, of course, can be changed. So as a Liszt music school, I can say things like, maybe the recruiter will not be able to hire somebody. The hiring manager will be able to hire somebody. But again, in a different company, it might be different. I'm not going to change anything here, but I'm going to start with the presentation. And I say, the green Leadware thing is very nice, but I want my own. And sorry, I don't have a Liszt theme to use here. But I'm going to change the style with something else that I do have for the demo. And I am going to borrow, let's say, the fabric. I'm going to name it Liszt. Oops. But I'm going to use the fabric style sheet. Okay? So this is an example of fabric. So now I'm uploading a style sheet that is following some naming conventions and some conventions that Leadware publishes. So I can use those conventions, and then I can apply that new style. There it is. So now imagine, there will be completely different logos, completely different fonts, backgrounds. Everything will change dynamically depending on who I am. So now let me go back to the third thing that I can change, which is obviously the data model, which is critical in applications like this. And we only choose to offer customizations on one entity, because doing one, it's pretty much the same for every other. So we did it for the position. And the position is the main entity, one of the main entities in the app. And you see that there is a section which is called shared schema, which all tenants will have, like the code, the posted on, the title. All of the tenants in the system will have those 3 fields, plus a section which is called custom schema. And that's something that I can, there's one field out of the box, which is location, and I can add my own. So because I am the music school, I'm going to introduce an instrument. I've been practicing. So, and this is a long text, short text. And I want this to be visible in the applications. I'm going to add it. And let's say experience. And that's a number. So you see, this is kind of remember one of the challenges that I mentioned, this self-service? Obviously, behind the scenes, there is whole kind of type mapping into the SQL types or the .NET types. But a user does not see that. They see numbers, they see dates, they see text, things which are easy to understand and easy to change and understand what's happening there. Okay, so I'm going to add that other field. I'm going to save the customizations. I can also change the views, so how these entities will show up on the UI. So, for example, in the search, I want to show the instrument. And I'm going to map that to the instrument field. Notice how customizations that I've done on a previous screen now show up on the other screens. This is using all of the metadata services that I mentioned before. And this is just one experience. The web, you could create your own designer on top of the same services. Okay, that one. And let's say configure views. In the detail, I'm going to show the instrument, and I'm going to show the experience. There you go. So finally, a lot of the business processes in Leadware are driven by Workflow Foundation. So we use Workflow Foundation as the main engine to implement the hiring processes. So what happens when somebody submits a resume? Well, depends on criteria, certain rules. You can change different, and you can have different hiring workflows. So that's pretty much what you can customize from a business logic perspective. In the real app, you can imagine having a more sophisticated offerings where you could even upload code, kind of like plugins that for more sophisticated tenants, you want to inject your own code in there. And that has its own implications from security, from stability of the system, a lot of things. We didn't do that because we ran out of time, and money. So we did this one that we believe was like a good example of how to extend it in a good way. So I'm going to show you a few examples of how you do this. Like, these are the two rules that we have, and say if the experience is less than something, then it's a short workflow. But if you have more than 15 years of experience, then you go and do an audition with the owner of the music school. So this is kind of the thing. Notice how, again, all of the fields that I have included now can participate from all these, different logic that how the system is working. Okay, I'm not going to change anything there. But you see how that's exposed. So now I'm done. I change it. I like the look and feel. I have my position. I have everything else. I'm done with it. Now I'm going to switch to the public site, which is the one that it's used in production now to do open positions, apply for a job, etc. And now the job will be that of an HR manager, or the one was the admin. Or this can be the recruiter, say. So a recruiter that says, I need to hire 3 new teachers. So I'm going to log in now as the recruiter in the site. And go to the career section. As a recruiter, I can do a lot of things. I can evaluate candidates. I can open positions, search for resumes. That list of actions is driven by my claims. So all of the roles that somebody defined, and in this case, the ones that come out of the box. So the first thing, of course, is opening a new position. And you see that the form includes the 2 fields that I created before, instruments and experience, obviously. So I'm going to create one. Yes, 98 years of experience playing guitar. That's pretty difficult. Let's say guitar. All right, and let me create another one. Piano. There you are. So now we have 2 new open positions. Let me see if I go to details. You see that the 2 fields that when I defined the view, I said I wanted to show those kind of things there. So now I'm going to log off, and I'm going to play the role of a teacher. I'm going to say guitar teacher. So if I log out, and let's say I find a list music school site somehow, and I go there, job search, I'm an applicant now, as I'm anonymous, therefore I don't have any, I can only search for jobs. Oh, by the way, you see here there's an RSS feed for the job listings, and that's using the APIs in Leadware. It's not using the web client, but rather the APIs, the REST APIs. And you see that they also have like, the extended fields as well. So the extended fields are showing in the RSS feed another experience of consumption. And this is using all of the syndication APIs in WCF. It's literally 3 lines of code or something like that. Very, very simple to do. So I kind of like this one. Yes, piano, going to apply for a job. Okay, and I need to register because I'm not registered in the system. So I'm Eugenio. So Leadware runs on IIS 7 and on Windows Server 2008, and that requires a strong password by policy. That's why I need to write very strange and long passwords. There you go. So now I'm registered. I go back to careers. Let's say, notice that there's another option in the menu. Let's say this one. I can't remember which one. Yeah, guitar. That's fine. That's my resume. And the resume contains a few things. Of course, there's the typical fields, which are fixed. There is an additional information section, which is derived from the position shape. Instrument and experience are coming from the position entity. And there is a presentation video, which is the video resume that I was talking about before. Okay, so let me fill all the, that's the place where you would paste your curriculum, and you will put all of your address information, etc. And then I'm going to, this was for the guitar, and I have 10 years of experience. And the funny thing, I have a video that's a demo of myself playing the guitar. You guys don't want to see that. So what's interesting is that Leadware does not store this video itself. This video is going to Silverlight Streaming. So Leadware, as an ISV, does not need to become an expert on managing and handling and delivering content like videos. More importantly, they don't have to buy all of this disk and storage to handle thousands of megabytes of videos that are seldom used. They can push that out to a third-party service, in this case, Silverlight Streaming Service, which is hosted by Microsoft, which is free, for now at least. And also, it's something that they don't have to worry about. Now, the interesting thing is that when I press Submit Resume here, there's a complex transaction happening behind the scenes. Because, first of all, imagine there's the store of the resume in my database, in Leadware's own database, and then uploading the video in Silverlight Streaming. And we will see what happens there. I cannot do begin transaction commit on these 2 resources because they're going across the network, and there's no transactions. There's no ACID transactions that go and will never be. Silverlight will never allow you to do locking on their own resources. Okay, so now let me go back to log out. I'm going to be back as a recruiter. Log in as a recruiter. So now I come back, and I see if I can evaluate some candidates, and I should have 1 candidate. There it is. And if I see the details, it's all the details, plus that's me playing the guitar, hopefully. It's a good thing that we don't have any audio here. Okay, but there's another interesting thing there, which is the video itself. It's different from the one that I uploaded. There's a little thing here that I'm not sure if you can see it, but you see there's like a watermark of some sorts, which is augmentation of the content done by Leadware on the video that is being uploaded in Silverlight. And you can imagine in a real scenario, in a more sophisticated scenario, somebody might do annotations and say, hey, dude, look here how he plays the C# node, or something like that. You can annotate and you can enhance it with your own things. So that's kind of the intention here, how the content is managed by Leadware on behalf of the tenant and stored in a different place, potentially not on Northwind hosting. Okay? No higher. All right. Any questions? So let me continue with one piece that I already hinted, which is one of the use and kind of the architectural challenges of doing things like this, which is not big deal. It's no rocket science. But you can do it in the wrong way, and then it could be a problem. So the sequence of actions in Leadware, when I submit the video, it's more or less like this. When I submit the whole thing, all of the data, plus the file with the video, all of that goes in one single package to the ASP.NET application. So for the first time, the video is temporarily stored in the web client of Leadware. So you need some basic storage in the web server initially. And then the recruiting service is called with all of that information. But that information only contains the basic information in the resume. It does not contain the video. First of all, because not every resume contains a video. Second, because we don't want to penalize the customer with 2 uploads. You can potentially have 15 megs of video content, and then you have to wait 15 once to the Leadware site, and 15 megs again from Leadware to Silverlight. So what we did there is we split that into 2 different operations.